Sorry, I lost track of time. The weather was beautiful outside today.
Well, I don't think this will be a super long meeting,
No.
so we should still be able to get a couple of rays of sunshine after we're done.
Okay, Catherine, you may go ahead. We're ready to go.
Okay, thanks, Tammy. Welcome everyone to our meeting of the Accessibility Advisory Committee. We have two agenda items this afternoon. But I think what we'll do first is just perhaps introduce ourselves, because we do have a new member joining us. And Marie, maybe you can start by telling us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll move around to everyone else. So welcome, Marie Francis. We're very happy to have you. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you. I'm really not good with names, so I'll probably keep doing that, but I guess you get a little name coming up here sometimes, so that's good. Let's see. I've lived in Barrie my entire life. I've got two children, ages almost 4 and almost 7. They've got birthdays next week. My 7-year-old son has high functioning autism, as does my husband. I myself am an ambulatory wheelchair user. I've worked with people with disabilities, I guess like going on 15, 16 years now. And yeah, I think that covers it.
Okay, welcome. I'll go ahead. I am Catherine Kenwell. I'm the chair of the committee, and I am in Barrie. I was born in Barrie, then lived in Toronto for 30 years, then came back almost 30 years to the day. I left after the Barrie tornado, where I think I received my first brain injury, and then it's just, sort of continued on with more injuries and things, and I'm a writer by profession and also an arbitrator. So there we go. Next.
I can go next. I'm Heather Morgan. I also live in Barrie. I have been here for 13 years next month. I'm very, very glad to have made the move up from Mississauga area. I am a very occasionally ambulatory wheelchair user, and I use a power wheelchair. My kids who are 20 and 17 are both on the autism spectrum and also both use power wheelchairs. So we have a lot of different disabilities going on at our house as well. And my husband's also on the autism spectrum. And I am very happy to be part of this committee. Been here for 2 years now?
I think it's 3 years. Yeah.
Yeah, it's cool. We've done some amazing things, and I'm glad to have you join us, Marie. I know we've had a chance to connect on a couple of other things, I think, before. So I will look forward to having your voice here with us.
Thank you.
Okay, I can go. I am Carolyn. I am a retired speech language pathologist. I wear bilateral hearing aids, and I've been on the committee a year. I was on the Barrie Heritage Committee prior to this, but on this particular one a year, and I'm enjoying it very much. And just like Heather said, it is, we've been doing some very good work on this committee. So welcome, Marie.
Welcome, Marie, and that's the fastest 3 years that I can remember being on committees. I've been on many of my life. Anyways, I moved to Barrie about 40 years ago. I'm a social worker by training. I've worked in the field of disabilities most of my life, and also I have bilateral hearing aids, and I have a mobility issue. So welcome, and it's a great committee to be on.
And Robert, are you there and able to talk? Introduce yourself.
Yes, I am. Thank you. Welcome to the committee. My name is Robert Thompson. I'm the appointed counselor for Ward 5 in the city of Barrie.
And Robert joins us without his video because he's often commuting and makes amazing time to join us in spite of all of his other commitments. And we are always grateful for that.
Yes, we very much appreciate your active involvement. Appreciate it. Staff, do you need to introduce yourselves?
I'll introduce myself. I think definitely Tammy and myself should, because today is Marie's first day, and then if the staff presenting they can present them. Pardon me. They can introduce themselves now if they wish, or when they're opening up the discussion later. It's their choice. So my name is Cheryl Dillon. I am the city's accessibility advisor. I've been here in Barrie since 2010. I'm not originally from this province, but I do love it. So it's definitely home now. And I apologize. I just had to go off video really briefly because my two little Shibas were getting a little crazy. The wind is blowing around the neighbor's garbage and recycling bins, and she came out to get them, and apparently they lost their minds a little bit. So to have a discussion about that. That's the working from home joys, I guess. So I myself have lived experience with disability, but I also went and studied extensively on disability policy and community rehabilitation, which brought me to this job, and I love it. And I've learned so much from the different accessibility advisory committees that we've had over the years. And I just think it's really cool that I get to hang out with people who have really innovative, creative ideas about our lived space, as well as, different services and programs and things like that I just would never think of. And I think that when you have that lens, it just makes things richer. So I'm very grateful for everybody here, and welcome Marie. And that's me in a nutshell. I support this committee.
Okay, I'll go ahead. I'm Tammy Maynard, and you've got emails from me. I'm the committee support clerk. I work in the Legislative and Court Services Department. I've supported the Accessibility Committee, I think, for a number of years now, if I'm not mistaken. And I'm born and bred in Barrie. So that's a nutshell for me.
Well, thank you. Thanks, everybody. I will let individual other staff introduce themselves as we go along. One thing I would like to bring up, just as a follow-up, after our last meeting, we received some feedback from Transit on the enabling change, and our input was quite valuable. And I'm thrilled. I'm sure that you read the email, but I'm thrilled that we are able to make a difference in that respect, that we're able to share our perspectives and lenses, and give our perspectives on transit and things that we need to be concerned about, but we just offer a different perspective. So I want to thank everybody for input, and here we go. We're going to have some more thinking on that, I would think, as it goes along. I guess we'll just jump into our Heritage Park Master Plan accessibility consultation. That's a mouthful. And who's leading this?
I think
I'll lead an introduction.
Wendy, you're leading it? Okay,
Yeah.
Thanks, Wendy.
Great, thanks for that. So hello, everybody. Thank you for this opportunity to consult with you this blustery March afternoon. We appreciate it. My name is Wendy Lovemark, and I'm a landscape architectural planner with the newly created Parks Planning section of Development Services. And I'm accompanied today by my manager, Kevin Bradley. I don't know if you want to give a shout out. Hello, Kevin.
Hello, Kevin.
Hi, everyone. My camera will be off because I'm technically off on short-term disability, and I'm working from my bedroom. So
I will try not to judge the fact that it's the afternoon, Kevin, and you're only supposed to be working in the morning, but that's another.
Oh dear. Yeah.
thanks, Cheryl.
Well, thanks for being here, Kevin.
And also with us today is my colleague Stephanie Weidman, who is our Parks Program Coordinator. If you want to say hello, Stephanie.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here today, and I look forward to learning more about what you do.
Great. Thank you. And we also have a few others who will be introduced momentarily. To sum up, we are here today because Parks Planning has been tasked with developing a new master plan for Heritage Park and one of Barrie's key waterfront destinations located across from Meridian Square. Can I confirm that everybody knows where Heritage Park is or is familiar with it? Is there anyone who is not? Okay, so Marie, just envision Barrie's Bay of Kempfelt Bay has a north, a middle, a west, and a south side. So this park is located on the north side, really almost up against the downtown, and it's our big park, and it's our floral display park, and it also has a fountain display in it, which a lot of people enjoy as a splash pad area in the summer.
So it's sort of going from just sort of that little area just beside Hooters when you go down the hill, all the way over to where you've got the
transient boat dock there.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got it.
Okay.
Exactly. Perfect. So to lead us through this master plan design process and to deliver the final master plan, I'd like to introduce you to our landscape architect, Michael Barker, who's the founder and principal of Shift Landscape Architecture. And with him, as part of his team today, we also have Christian Stewart, who is a landscape and urban designer. I'll just stop there and let Michael say hello quickly, and then I'll just say a few remarks before I turn it over.
Hi, everyone.
There we go. Thank you for the wave. And Christian.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Great. Thanks, Christian. So as part of Michael's design program for Heritage Park, we're consulting with all our internal stakeholders here at the city. So we are pleased to be here now to solicit your comments. We look forward to your feedback. And to begin this process, I'd like to turn the remaining introductory remarks over to Michael. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. And Wendy summed that up pretty well. We've been working, well, we started about a year ago, but then we ran into a bit of a hiccup called COVID. So things sort of slowed down, and we've just picked this back up, I guess about 6 weeks now, sort of doing some of this introductory work, gathering some information. We've met with technical groups from the city and other stakeholders, but we felt it was really important to reach out to this group especially. Because a lot of what we do in the public realm is influenced by the needs of groups like yourselves and others. So as in our process of gathering that information to sort of inform the direction that we head with the park, it's important that we meet with you. So today we're really here to just listen. We don't have any fancy graphics or cool things to share at this time. It is really we're just starting to get into that sort of idea development phase where we're starting to look at some of the possibilities. The intent is that this is a master plan that's created that informs the future direction of the park. So it's not necessarily that we're going to develop a design and that will be constructed in 2 years. It's more likely going to be a phased sort of approach, but this master plan will guide that future direction. So as I say, today is a bit of an opportunity for us to listen to perhaps some of the challenges that you face in public spaces, but even I think because this is a little bit different than a lot of spaces because it's an existing park. So maybe there's already some challenges that you can identify or some opportunities that can be developed through this process. So with that, I think if you all have some different opinions, or Cheryl, I see a hand up.
Yeah, sorry, I think there's a way to do an emoji hand. I just haven't figured that out yet for Zoom. So just one question.
Yeah.
I know that this is very preliminary, and these comments, along with other stakeholders' comments are going to help inform your design. But just to kind of help us give the feedback that you're looking for, I'm wondering if you and or Wendy or perhaps Kevin or Stephanie can speak about any physical attributes of the current park that are not changing, that are staying, so that just kind of like the bones, so that, you know, when people are providing their comments, they're not, you know, telling you to rip something out that, you know, council has said has to stay, or do you know what I mean? Like just.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
And I think a bit more about the process. What we'll look to do through this master plan process is develop a few different levels of possibilities, three different designs. There'll be probably one that is much more aggressive and progressive from a design point of view about what might happen to the park, and then one that'll be in the middle ground, and then one that'll be probably more of a refresh. I would say the things that are going to stay that we can are the two buildings. They may have some recladding or some painting or some refreshing, but we should probably assume those stay. The bridge will stay, so that what direction would that be, Wendy? The north side of the splash pad area, there's a bridge that will stay. The pond will stay, maybe.
There's actually two bridges in that park.
Well, I meant the vehicular bridge.
Okay.
The splash pad bridge.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the other one will stay as well, because we need that pond outlets into the bay there, so we need to cross that. So it'll stay. And the pond will stay. Perhaps in one of the ideas it's expanded or reconfigured slightly, but it will generally stay in its current configuration. Parking will stay to some degree. There might be in one of the concepts a bit of a reimagining of the parking, but at this point, I think perhaps as we go down, we might get some down through the process. There might be some different opinions, but I think right now the parking is probably going to stay. So that sounds like everything's staying, but within those physical constraints, there's a lot of opportunity actually to sort of reimagine how this park functions and how it is sort of not only a recreational space, but a cultural space in the city, especially given its prominent location at the bay, also that interface between the downtown. So
absolutely. Thank you so much for doing that, for laying that out.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I think Heather had a question.
I had a couple of ideas I thought I might get us started with, if that's okay.
That's great.
So I use Heritage Park regularly, so I'm quite familiar with it. So I love the idea of continuing to ensure that it is a space that can be used well for our community in the years to come. The first thing that I thought I would mention is the challenge of accessing washing facilities for somebody like myself in a wheelchair. The door is not only very heavy and unbuttoned, but the space, once you clear the door, is very, very difficult to maneuver in. As someone as a wheelchair user, the sinks are impossible to use. And basically what I end up doing, as I said before, I'm just about ambulatory when I really have to, wheelchair user. And so I end up getting out of my wheelchair, leaving my wheelchair with a friend outside of the washroom and sort of trying to get myself in. It's very, very unhygienic when you have to use the walls and very unsafe on days when that's not a good idea for me to do. So that would be my first wish for your list, is something that is properly accessible. From my experiences at Centennial Beach, I would say it would be much more wonderful for me at my level of disability to have the option of a navigable main washroom with a accessible stall. But I know that there are others for whom having a washroom that is separate would be critical and necessary. And I know that one of the things we've mentioned in the past about a wish list for this group is some space along the waterfront that would allow for full adult change facility for residents and visitors who use who require having their brief changed or what have you, need to be laid down flat to be able to access that. So if you are redeveloping that space anyways, then maybe that's a wish list to put out there, although others I'm sure will tell me why that's not the right spot for it. Cheryl, I'm sure, has opinions. That's fine. I'm just putting it up, bringing it back up onto our radar. And then the second thing I was going to mention is that that metal pedestrian bridge, while it is wonderful once you get onto it, currently there is such a dip down from both ends of it that it is very, very scary to get onto it. You kind of have to do a leap of faith and hope your wheelchair doesn't tip backwards entirely on you. And theoretically it doesn't, but it always feels like it's going to. So if there can be some grading reconsiderations around that portion, I don't think it's more than like a foot or two that would need to be reconsidered. It's quite a small thing, but it would mean that I would feel like I could use either bridge, which is particularly nice in the winter given the way that plowing happens in that park. So it would definitely open up the park better for winter access. Those were my two thoughts.
That's great, great information to share. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Heather. Any other comments?
Just to add on to Heather's idea, I don't know if this is at all possible, but just something to keep in mind would be year-round bathrooms, because I don't think those ones are currently accessible in the winter. In fact, I think the only toilets we have in winter right now are the ones, is it by Centennial? That's all we've, no, it's South Shore are the ones that are open this winter, I think.
Mm.
If anyone knows of another toilet, do tell me, because we'll go there and use it when I'm out with the kids.
Yeah, no, you're correct. Right now, like, we don't have winter access for a number of our park washrooms. And that's less of an accessibility. Like, I know it becomes an accessibility issue, but it's in response to downtown policing issues because of homeless populations and drug paraphernalia that's used and our inability to maintain safety. And so we have in the past had spaces open in the winter, but the last couple of years it's become more and more problematic. So but that's not to say that doesn't mean we can't raise that as a question and a concern with council, because there's going to be some really proactive social programs addressing some of those issues in the community in the future. And maybe with that happening, it will allow us to have more flexibility in opening up those spaces in the winter. So, yeah.
It's a little bit off topic, sorry to interrupt, but the bus terminal is open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, the washroom facilities right now.
Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you for sharing that, Councillor.
And there's a little bit of context from what we've discussed with other groups so far. The washroom building continues to come up for a variety of stakeholders for different reasons. Safety, the marina has concerns about access for the people that rent the docks on the weekends and stuff, but relating to safety. And so I think this is all good information. One of the potential possibilities and benefits of a project like this, forming a master plan, is that we can make suggestions about what happens in the washroom. As I said, I don't imagine in the short term that those buildings are going to come down and new washrooms be built, but the master plan process can allow for suggested improvements to those washrooms. Heather, you said the door is very heavy, so is that to suggest that there's not an automatic door opener on it currently?
I don't think that, no. It's,
So
yeah.
there's a very easy win in the master.
Yeah, the problem is if you put a button on it at the moment, I mean, I would need to honestly go down there with someone to try it with my chair to even see if it was possible to navigate once you get through the door in a chair. Like it is not, I don't think it was built with any accessibility in mind.
Right.
So that would certainly be something to consider. A button makes a world of difference, but I'm just not sure whether at this point what it would give us on the other side.
Yeah.
So
And
the big picture is so important.
And if this, Michael, if washrooms come up routinely with other stakeholders, I'm really happy that it's not just us talking about washrooms, because I feel like we talk about them a lot. But if it is routinely coming up, especially from a safety concern, perhaps there might be some design recommendations that you and your team can make regarding deterrence and promoting safety within design, because I know design elements are not just simply passive like we might think. Like they sometimes they have a dynamic impact on the community and the way the community interacts with that space that could not just promote accessibility but safety as well.
Yeah, and I think you say that you speak about washrooms. This isn't something we're here just in Barrie. Washrooms in public spaces are a challenge for every community, as are the challenges that lead to some of the safety issues. And they're not problems that we through design can solve completely. But we can start to look at things. And frankly, one of the best ways to perhaps create a safer environment is to create, and Heritage Park is actually quite a nice park. It's just perhaps a little dated. But so creating a park and creating opportunities for new programming is going to draw more people there, which in and of itself starts to create a safer environment already. So that's really, I think, the hope for the project. And then a lot of those issues around the bathroom, the washroom building, it probably is just due to age that things were not done perhaps, well, certainly the way we would do them now. And I think we could probably look back, critique it and say not done properly. So our master plan, we're starting to hear more and more that it will need to address the washrooms to some degree. And that might be one of the shorter term things that can happen if we imagine that our master plan will make suggestions over let's say a 10-year period. Well, maybe in year one, it's the washrooms that need to be fixed, along with some new gathering spaces and entry places and those sorts of things. So is there any condition in the park that you feel through as users that lends to a less than comfortable experience? Is there, do you feel that there's spaces that feel unsafe?
If I may speak to that, Michael.
Sure. Yeah.
I don't have mobility issues, but I do have concerns about the amount of grass and greenery that's there in terms of mobility. I don't know if the plan is to maintain or increase the green area, but is it in the master plan to look at having service clubs put on displays, and so you have to keep the grass there?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we have to balance as when we're doing a design like this is finding ways to create a park, especially in a park like this, that allows for programming. So one of the things right now is, I believe it's every Wednesday night, there's the car group, I'll call them for lack of a better description, that uses the park for that activity. And then you could imagine maybe there could be movie nights. There could also be concerts that use Heritage Park in tandem with Meridian Place across the way. But what we also want to do is try and create a park that's good Monday to Friday in May, so that people can go down there and out of their office or out of their apartment building and enjoy the park. And that's really what the challenge is. I think one of the opportunities for Heritage Park specifically is that it can do both. I think there is that possibility. And one of the things we're starting to look at a little bit is maybe and it's already kind of set up this way, but sort of the open lawn space. And then we start to create more intimate gathering-like spaces in some of the areas. So it brings the scale of the park down a little bit.
Is there a thought or consideration to using permeable pavers at all? You know, I'm like, I take Carolyn's point, but at the same time, you know, we don't want to pave over everything. Like we have a need for green space within our urban environment, and we also just created a concrete plaza right across the street with Meridian Place. So we certainly don't want to repeat that design in Heritage Park, but perhaps Carolyn, maybe you can expand on your thoughts about the surfacing. So you know, if there's a balance between grass and other types of surfacing that allow a greater variety, diversity of accessibility needs, mobility needs, would that be something that would speak to you? And if so, what ideas might you have about that to share?
I don't have any ideas, Cheryl. I was just asking or suggesting to Michael as part of the overall plan or the master plan, just to ensure that was factored in, which it obviously is.
And one of the things we've also heard, and it's funny how there's these sort of synergies between pragmatic uses and sort of park design. But one of the things we've heard from the operations people is that some larger and more durable pathways through the park would benefit them. So for us, we take that information and start to think about, because we don't want to create a park that just has service drives through it, but how can we start to make these pathways actually places that people can enjoy and places people can be, but when somebody needs to come through in a pickup truck to do maintenance, it works for that as well. So I think, and these things, although they sound at times like challenges and constraints, I think that's what can lead to really exciting design and really exciting opportunities. So.
Okay, Louise?
Yeah, one of the things that I remember from the Collingwood trails, and it came up when we used to go take people, a lot of the clients in their wheelchairs and things, was lighting at night. And so it could only stay out till a certain time of night because there was absolutely no lighting. So I just wondered, will that be something that will be looked at in terms of lighting in the park in various areas, depending on what the function is?
I think absolutely lighting in this type of park will be a very significant part of the project. For safety, yes, but also for the experiential quality. It could be actually a lighting strategy that sort of changes throughout the year. So we have sort of different levels. I think at the very basic level is about safety. And then the second level is about creating an experience in a sort of urban condition. It's a challenge now, because, especially in a place like Barrie, because we don't want to create a glowing beacon, and especially against the bay. And you know, you're starting to get to the point where you can probably see some stars and stuff at night. So we want to think intelligently about how we do lighting, but it certainly will be a major piece of the project.
That's really cool. And it could tie into community projects, not necessarily all year round, because as you say, Michael, you don't want to create a nuisance lighting structure. But, you know, we have, because we're in the time of COVID, we have, you know, community festivals like Wintertude, is that what it is with the McLaren? I can't remember. No, not Winterlude, it's something else. It's the McLaren's doing a light display.
I saw it. Oh yeah.
Yeah. So like, you know, depending on how you factor in your lighting, it could become a community art, you know, installation as well. I don't want to, you know, like put pressure on that, but just like confines to it. But I think one of the things you said earlier speaks to that, is that when you have constraints, sometimes what that does is it allows for really awesome creative opportunities for design. So I think that's really great. But I think Heather had her hand up, and I'm actually
Yes.
really interested to know what Heather thinks about surfacing in the
Yeah.
trail, the pathways. I think that would be.
Thanks, Cheryl. Heather.
Yeah, I was going to speak to that and one other thought that comes off of that. So from my lived experience, I have never been someone who could push myself independently in a manual wheelchair on any surface, and except like, you know, completely flat in the mall for like 5 minutes. So I'm not a great one to say one way or the other in terms of grass for manual wheelchair users. As a power wheelchair user, because of the way that city maintenance crews keep the lawns clear, I don't actually have any trouble getting across the lawns in any of our city parks if I need to. And typically when I was in a manual chair, my husband would just, you know, sort of go ahead and push me, and that was fine. But like wheelchair casters, the front wheels can get caught in the grass. So I think that the way that Heritage is set up right now, though, really allows, because the grass areas, they are large, but they're all surrounded by paths. And what that means is that you can actually get to almost everything without having to leave the path, while maintaining quite a large grass area to honestly allow those who don't need the path to be a path for themselves to get out of the way of the path, so that those who need it as a path can use it. So I find that it actually works quite well that way. But I was going to mention two things. The path that is right along the waterfront is currently a very thin, very fine gravel, and that can be quite difficult to navigate. So rather than increasing the number of paths, making that path more accessible through whatever, you know, surface is determined for that, might be a good way to think about increasing path usage. And further to that, one of the things that I noticed Heritage Park is very much used for, appreciated for, enjoyed for, is fishing. Now, I am not a fishing person, but it is very difficult for somebody like myself to get close enough to the waterfront to be able to do fishing.
Can I just interrupt? Sorry, you said the magic word, and I was gonna say this later on to Michael. I was gonna say, hey, just so you know, so we have a Rotary Club in town in Barrie who has put an application in to the city. I believe it's been approved. It was approved a couple of years ago for an accessible fishing dock to be installed, developed, created, installed at Heritage Park. The last I had heard,
that was exactly what I was going to suggest it added.
So it's been approved, and the Rotary Club, there is a Rotary Club in town that has funded for it, and they have funding for it, and they're working with a biologist and other interested people who care about fishing and conservation and stuff like that, to make sure that it's not just accessible, but it's, you know, meeting all these other kinds of fancy things. And my understanding is they do have city approval for it to be located in Heritage Park. I don't know. I think COVID interrupted that. I think I think they were to be working on it in 2020, and then COVID happened.
Yeah, so, we're aware of the dock.
Okay, yay. Okay, good.
It's sort of, it's in the plan as far as we're concerned. It's in the park, and we're working with it. So, yeah.
And then further to that, I don't know whether there are any modifications that might be possible to be made to the splash pad to make the splash pad fountain area more accessible for children in wheelchairs. Because I know how intensely joyful that can be for kids. And, you know, moms just accept the fact that the wheelchair seats are going to get a little bit wet, and everybody is just thankful for the chance to be able to get out there and play alongside of other children. And because it is a solid surface, it allows for a much more even playing field for those with manual chairs, at least. So I don't know whether there's because there's so many of those like smaller rocks embedded. I don't know whether there's any way to reconceptualize some of the paving throughout that space to make that more accessible, or any additional features that maybe have been developed over the years that we could bring in and incorporate to improve on that. But I thought it was worth mentioning, since we were talking about paths and how we allow the best access to as many of these spaces. I think a lot of it can be done just by, you know, these additions of thinking accessibly about fishing and the other things.
And I think there will be at least one iteration of a plan that shows that water feature drastic, just completely different, like completely redone and rethought in a more contemporary fashion, and sort of more accessible and perhaps a little bit more welcoming and inviting. So certainly I think that is one of the big moves, if you will, that we could imagine through this project.
It's great.
One of the things I do like about that water area is that at least there are some trees around there. I found the one over by Lantern Lane is very tree-less, just for taking the little kids there. So that's kind of an awesome feature. We do have some more mature trees in that area, which is kind of nice.
Yeah, and I think that is one of the things that is quite nice about it, notwithstanding that it creates some maintenance challenges because of the leaf litter and the branches and so forth. But those are nice mature trees that we will certainly endeavor to work around, in whatever we do works with that and tries to rethink how we can maintain the shade, but perhaps think about the water feature in a different way.
Okay, any other comments, questions?
Yeah, so one thing I'm interested to know about is whether or not there is a signage display type plan for this park space. You know, is this park space themed? Is it part of the 9 Mile Portage, Wendy? Are we gonna have, you know, any type of signage in the park that ties into some of the other signage displays that we have in other areas of the lakeshore, or is it going to possibly be something totally different? And if it is, I think we have an opportunity, perhaps, you know, thinking about cognitive disabilities and or unique differences. We may have a really interesting opportunity to incorporate some sensory cognitive type interactive pieces into this space, not just for children, but for, you know, from an age-friendly perspective, for adults with unique differences, cognitive differences. I don't know, like I can't even articulate well.
Are you talking about things like braille or pictograms?
No, it could be anything, all of the above. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you have something that you're like say like an inspiration piece in mind, something you've seen that was inspiring you to ask that question?
No, I'm just thinking about some of the other work that we've done along our waterfront, and I know how much the community loves it. You know, I think the community likes to engage with the spaces that we have, whether it's physically or through a passive education and awareness. And I don't know the history of that park, so I don't know if there's something interesting to pull out that would be related to that. And this is something to discuss for the plan. Like, so if you're creating a master plan for this park, perhaps there are pieces related to Barrie's origins. Perhaps it's, our heritage story, from an Indigenous perspective. Perhaps it's related to the railway coming in off the North Shore Trail. Like, I don't even know, but I'm just wondering if, like, I'm just thinking if there's an element, if there is the idea to have an educational element in this space, then I would like it to be accessible. And there's various different ways of doing that. And we can obviously link things to our website, but this creates a different opportunity for us to look at different things.
If I understand you, and I'm hearing the words like cognitive, sensory, interactive, that offers up a world of potential to explore there. I just want to make sure that we're not maybe talking about the Waterfront Heritage Trail, which you're right is featured. It has a station located in the Heritage Park, which I'm sure Heather is probably familiar with. There possibly were some signs installed today even, because I was speaking with operations staff this morning, where we've got the downtown theme there, and we're talking about the history of downtown, where we also will be adding some signs there about the history of the 9 Mile portage, and how that portage is an Indigenous trail.
Then maybe we don't need to. I'm just kind of thinking out loud here, and just the idea that, like, if signage is going to be part of this space, whether it's signage just to say washroom is this way, or if it's signage to kind of elaborate about the history of the space as you have in other areas, then potentially, if we're looking at a plan, not just for today, but for like 10 years down the road, then maybe it's an opportunity for us to incorporate other elements that we haven't yet incorporated.
Yeah, and I think that's a great idea. And I think that we'd love to hear from people on your committee, because of course there's wayfinding signage, which you're talking about with the mapping. There's the interpretive signage, which is conveying our history. But I think Michael's going to be exploring some things about what's engaging to public. We have art potentials, but maybe people on this committee have some original thoughts of their own, of some directions that we could explore.
Absolutely. Yeah.
One of the things we try to do in all of our work, especially at Park, that's as significant as this, is try to understand the local context, the historic context, and interpret that through design, not just through signage. Signage is important at times, but we don't want to just have a park that's full of signs. I think if we do a good job of understanding the context, then we're able to abstract that into a park that becomes an exciting kind of place. I'm going to have to run. Christian's still on the phone. I have to pick up my son at school, or they're going to give me heck. So Christian's still going to be here with you, so he can answer some of your questions. But I really appreciate all the feedback. It's very helpful, and we will be able to share more with you through our PICs and open houses and stuff that we have, and look forward to more of your comments. So
wonderful. Thank you so much for coming.
Yes.
Thank you, Michael.
Thanks, bye.
Thank you.
We'll talk soon. Bye-bye.
Okay, Heather, your hand is up.
I think Carolyn's was up before mine. I don't mind waiting my turn.
Your faces are bouncing around, so I'm trying to. It's like almost like Twister or something. I'm trying to keep track. Okay, Carolyn.
Okay, you're a good soul, Heather. Thank you. I was just wondering about the origin of the name of Heritage Park. I don't need to know it now, but Wendy, is it going to stay as Heritage Park? Is the master plan looking at changing the name? And if so, will it be open to the public to put their suggestions in.
I don't know if Kevin wants to respond to that. Did we
Thank
lose
you
Kevin?
for the question.
Oh,
Thanks, Wendy.
yeah.
Yeah, there is no intent to change the name.
Okay.
The name, to be honest with you, it predates Wendy and my time at the city. The project actually is infill. It's not land that has any type of heritage context. It was created artificially in two phases in 1993 and 1996, if my history lessons are correct. Out of interest, though, I think I will do a little homework to see if I can find out where the name was selected. Often these are council decisions that are just made for whatever reason. There could be discussion about why they chose that name, but there's no intent or any thought of changing it.
Okay, thank you.
Great question, though.
If I could just pick up just on the last thread of conversation, just before I turn over the mic just quickly. The other thing that we want to explore, and we may need some assistance from this committee or members of the committee, is shifting from, just meeting the bare requirements of AODA or the design for public spaces reg. What we want to do is even move beyond inclusion and inclusivity to looking at universal design and starting to apply some of the tenets of universal design to this park. But I'll be honest with you, it's new to us. Some of us were just in a workshop just prior to Christmas, I think, where we started to learn a little bit about it. But if it's a dialogue that we can have with you, or if you have information that you could point us in the direction of, that would be appreciated.
Well, I'll pass it over to Heather now, because I know Heather has some information, but she also has a question.
Sorry, my phone rang and I pressed the wrong button to try to make it stop. I'm just going to make that not make noise at me. My apologies. Everything coming in through the same headphones and messed my brain up there. Universal design as a goal is always something that makes me happy. I don't know whether you have, Kevin, or not, but I did a little happy dance when you said those words. A couple of things do come to mind in terms of that, just off the top of my head, and obviously sitting down with a few thoughts for a little bit would add a few more to that list. I'm sure that we can get those ideas to you down the road, but one is creating spaces where there is more option for picnicking for those who are in wheelchairs, to be able to join up to a table and be able to, join a family at a picnic or something like that, was one of the things I was going to mention. Another thing that I have seen best demonstrated at Holland Bloorview in Toronto and at Bridgepoint in Toronto. They're both rehabilitation centers. Both of them have tactile and other artistic, not greenery, but like garden spaces that you can wheel through, that allow for foliage to be both over top of you and around you, that allow you to participate from the path in the garden. So it brings it up and around. So, like a clematis vines over a trellis in one portion of the path. You can go under that, you can look through it. It's going to create interesting designs and features that way. Another one is some of the water features that bring things up again, so that you can reach out and put your hand through it and you can touch it and interact with it that way. Or maybe something with a bit of a soundscape. So I've seen in some communities they have raised sections with bells that you can hit, or like a xylophone you can hit, and the mallets are all obviously attached on metal strings so that they don't wander off. But it allows all ages, all abilities to join in, to touch, to hear, to engage that way. And then the other thing that Bridgepoint has is a labyrinth that you can wheel through. And so it creates, I mean, there's many different types of designs from various traditions that you could use for something like that. But it would create a space that was just designed onto concrete on the ground or into bricks on the ground, but that nevertheless allowed for participation both by able-bodied and mobility challenged individuals. So all of those are things that come off the top of my head today without having any planning for it. But, you know, give me a week, I can probably come up with a few more for you.
Thank you, Heather.
Any other comments, questions? I think this is something that we can certainly give some more thought to and maybe bring it back. We bring it back to another meeting or have a conversation a little bit later. We gathered information about the enabling change after a meeting and submitted that. So maybe we can do the same kind of thing.
I'm thinking, I'm thinking because they're really at early stages here. So I think you have an opportunity to have multiple conversations with them at various different, you know, we don't want to detract from their process. But certainly I think anybody who has additional comments and ideas, Heather is a fountain of resources and information. She can, you know, put that on an email and Tammy or myself can send that along to you guys. And then maybe when you're through your consultations and you have some drafts that you're working on, maybe then if it's possible, you could come back and share some of the designs that have kind of come out. And I think everybody here, speaking for on behalf of it, I think everybody would be really excited to see and hear about that process, because this is an exciting project.
Yes, it is. Yeah, very much so. And yeah, so please keep coming back and telling us more. Kevin?
Thank you, Kevin. Yes, for certainty, we will come back to you once the schematic design gets a little further developed and we have something that's a little bit more robust for you to comment on. That's promise one. Cheryl, the question I guess I would have, so Heather has got my mind, and you know the way my mind works. I've already got projects in mind. There are a number of things that we're looking at, and the one that touched my interest is the percussion, the outdoor percussion that Heather was referring to. It's actually by a company called Percussion Play. And we've been looking at kind of Sunnydale Park as one area, a little off topic here, but that we can introduce new elements for people, families, children of all abilities, people of all abilities to explore more of the park than just an area adjacent to an older building, including outdoor music rooms and things like that. So how do we keep a dialogue with this committee to get their to have the ideas come the other way?
You just did it. That's perfect. That's the invitation, because now every single one of the members is going to have a bug in their ear, and then if they have
you
something,
might regret this, Kevin.
Then they can share.
All right. Well, we will rely on Cheryl to filter all your fantastic ideas, but it helps us to understand. Parks planning is newly reformed in the organization, that we have one way of seeing. It's our lens. We need your lens on it, because there are probably amazing things and ideas that you have that we haven't thought of, obviously. So I'll just leave that where that is then. Thank you, Paul.
Perfect.
Thank you. Carolyn?
If I may follow that up, Kevin, I would think a wonderful resource for you would be the Music Therapy Association. They would have a lot of information along those lines for you.
Great.
And
Thank you.
Marie? Thanks. Thank you. Yeah, Marie?
when we went to Halifax a couple of summers ago, back in those wild pre-pandemic days when you could go places and do things, we found that a lot of the parks there had like a rubber rock type surface. I don't know how well that would work here or what the complications of it are and whatnot. But that was, I found, a very good surface for being able to roll on. And I know it's also, I believe, quite permeable for water being not sitting on the surface like it does with pavement. So that's just kind of a neat surface to work with. It can also be lighter color, so it's not quite as hot in the summer. The other kind of neat thing about that space is that weird sort of muddy beach area is just neat because it's a spot that's very very level access to the water. And we don't have a ton of those. Like, you know, if you go over to the other side of the water, where on the side of Barrie where I live, you know, you've got, I mean, Manette's Point is very, very good. But some of the other ones, we always call it like the beach of 90 degrees, that one on the path there. And then,
yeah, Tyndale's pretty steep.
It's steep. I know. Yeah. I noticed that when you guys redid it, it was graded to be shallower. But that's a challenge for me even when I'm using my forearm crutches.
So are you thinking, Marie, perhaps, because I know the exact spot you're talking about, it's right by Hooters there, that level.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. So, but still, even though it is more level, it's not fully accessible. But
oh, good heavens, no.
But we could we have a Moby mat at Centennial Beach.
Yes.
Because that space at Heritage is so small, we could probably just put one or two Moby platforms down, and it would
do it completely.
It would be accessible. That might be something to consider. I don't know if that's something that we want to include in this project. I know they're thinking about Moby mats at other beaches, like Johnson's Beach, for example. So maybe the space is too small, but perhaps Christian and Michael, maybe the designers know something about, maybe there's something that we can, do that makes it accessible, but using some other type of design, whether it's a rock. I don't know. I'm just making stuff up, but you know what I mean? Like,
it's just if we're just going to dream big and just dream in really, universal, accessible ways, that's just something to note, that we do have an opportunity there. However, we're able to use it, I don't know, but it's just something to note that we do have a little piece of, beach. Pile of mud there. That is at least a very level entry with a good parking lot surrounding it and stuff. So it's not a big space, but it is a little opportunity.
And you know what? Okay, since we're talking about that space, Kevin, you and I have had a conversation about that space in the past, because we have had members of the public who have mobility impairments that use that location, or like to use that location for their dogs in the summer, but they'd like to do that legally. And I know we have relaxed our notions about off-leash dogs at the beach during like early morning hours. Or maybe we're not telling people that, I don't know. But for the whole, Heritage Park kind of plan, not just accessibility, but kind of accessibility. We do have members of our public who want that, who do, use mobility devices, and it's an easy location for them, because as Marie's saying, it is a much flatter space. So I don't know, but
Yeah.
just putting it out there.
Also, are we going all the way over around there to that weird little park that contains like one swing set and that I'm always kind of afraid to let my kids go over close to, or is that not part of what we're talking about?
That that's out of scope. That's
Okay.
for this part. That's
But
Sam
I
can,
love the way she's talking about that weird little park.
Yes.
And I think it's funny that we all know what park she's talking about.
Yeah.
that's Sam Kinsella Park, which we will look at a future date. And just on the issue of edges, so Christian Michael's firm, part of the scope of their work is to look at the complete edge of Heritage Park and how it relates to the water, how we can get people in more close proximity and experiencing the water differently and experiencing the edges of the park differently instead of just a huge rock wall. So it is part of their thinking to come up with some ideas. And we've seen a lot of interesting precedents and projects coming out of Europe where they've started to change this look. And there's a whole new research paper that just came out on the importance of seascapes and lakescapes from mental health perspectives as well. So all of that kind of thinking will go into this project.
Great, thank you, Kevin. I think Heather has a question, comment. You're on mute.
Sorry, I know I have lots to say on this subject, but I'm going to blame Cheryl because she brought up the Moby mats. I have a general request for city staff when it comes to the Moby mats. Is there any possible way that they can actually go down into the first couple of inches of the water instead of ending a foot before the water? Because I still can't get my feet in the water from there.
Yeah. I think let's have that offline. Like that's totally something that's totally doable. We can, and we can make sure, like this was our first experience with Moby mats, you guys. So we learned a lot.
This is not criticism. This is building on last year. But also further to that, I was just going to say, in terms of Marie's idea of making it easier to get into the water at Heritage specifically, that area is sort of conceptualized as a spot to launch boats that are non-powered. So stand-up paddleboards and canoes and kayaks. And there are a number of folks with wheelchairs and other mobility devices who can use those types of boats. And I wondered whether there would be any possibility for a way of locking a wheelchair up in right at that edge so that you could go down, transfer into your boat, and just have somebody like help you put the wheelchair into a locked cage there. That's like that. I'm dreaming really big now.
Yeah,
but
no,
I
dream. Yeah, that's great. I have no idea, but like, and I maybe nobody else does either, but that's something that we can investigate. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's a really neat idea. I like that.
I kind of feel like we have taken way more than
yes, I
Wendy
would like to
and Kevin and Stephanie and Christian anticipated way more of their time. Obviously, we're very, very excited about this project. So thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. We appreciate the extra time that you spent with us, and we do have a lot of ideas, and I'm sure we'll have more as we go along. And we really, really, as a team, look forward to working with you. This is going to be so exciting. So thank you, and I think we can probably release you, and you can go and spend some nice time in the outdoors.
Great, thank you, everyone. And I really appreciate
very much
all your comments. It's been really valuable and really enriching. So we can't wait to show you some more and hear some more. And
I was furiously taking notes, so thanks very much for having me. And childcare duties start for me about 10 minutes ago. So, but thanks a lot for having me.
Yeah,
great, and thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you. Good night. Take care.
Good night, everyone.
Bye.
Take care. Okay, that's an interesting project.
Yeah.
Now, the other item we have on the agenda is 2021 National Accessibility Week.
Yes. So
Yeah.
for Marie, who I think Marie, I think you're my neighbor.
Okay. Do you live on Warnica?
I live on Warnica. I have two dogs, and I walk them all the time. And I sometimes see you and your
saw
kids.
me this morning?
I saw you this morning with your son. Yeah.
That was us. We're doing the,
Nice
the
to
7
meet
o'clock
you.
walks now
Yeah.
to try to get him calmed down a bit before he goes to his online classes, and it seems to really be helping a lot. So some days you'll see my husband, some days you'll see me, and
yeah. Perfect. I love it. Nice to meet you. Okay, so National Accessibility Week. It used to be called National Accessibility Week, but then several years ago, as part of Rick Hansen's anniversary of his Man in Motion tour, he petitioned the federal government to make a change so that it became National Accessibility Week. So not accessibility, but ability. So just slight change, and it's
okay. So it's
access.
The emphasis being on access.
Is the emphasis on ability?
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure whether we were trying to focus on the access or the ability.
Well,
they separated the word into two words.
Or maybe,
okay.
or maybe it's both. Maybe the emphasis is on both. But I like it because it talks about ability, and that's certainly from a disability perspective, accessibility perspective. Ableism is an issue. And everybody is able, and just having that conversation is good. So the city has traditionally celebrated it in a variety of different ways. It's usually the end of the last week of May, beginning of June, and the committee, they've had open houses at the Rotunda. They've had town halls at the museum, Simcoe County Museum before. With they had David Onley once as a guest speaker. We've had different events at the South Shore Center. We've had little teeny tiny little pancake breakfast kind of thing, pancake breakfast and coffee in the morning, which is really popular for people on their way to work. Outside City Hall, and we get food donated and stuff like that. And sometimes they're really small and just a proclamation, and sometimes they're bigger events. This year, it doesn't matter what we want it to be. We are confined by COVID, but it's the 20th anniversary of this committee. So we have had an accessibility advisory committee at the City of Barrie since 2001. And so I didn't want to have this year's accessibility week go by without doing something. And not just for the community, because I think the community at large is very supportive, and so is our staff, but also for our staff. There's a lot of staff that don't know that we've had an accessibility advisory committee since 2001. And that's pretty amazing. So I'm doing some research, and Tammy's helping me. I had an interview with Louise Pope, who's sitting on the committee here today, on Monday, because Louise, if you guys didn't know, was a member of the second accessibility advisory committee. So she would have been, it would have been 2005. It would have been 2005, 2006. I think that's her 4-year term would have been 2005, probably, right? Yeah. And so she had stories to tell and to share. And so that was good. And then on Tuesday, I interviewed a staff person who used to work for the clerk's office, Lisa Pearson, who was a longtime clerk secretary for the Accessibility Advisory Committee. And she had even more things to tell. And so both her and Louise have told me to talk to John Sisson, who is our former clerk, and a number of other individuals who were very, very involved at the beginning of the development of the committee. So believe it or not, downtown Barrie didn't have curb cuts consistently back in 2001. So for individuals who have mobility impairments, you can just imagine how big an issue it was to get around when there's things that we take for granted today that 20 years ago, which is not so long ago, they weren't really commonplace. And if you think about it also, the legislation was different. So we had the Ontarians with Disabilities Act in 2001. We didn't have the AODA, which is what we're operating with now, but also our building code was very different. So there's all these different pieces. And I kind of want to, even though it's COVID, I want to do something so that it just acknowledges like how far we've come. So I'm going to continue to interview people and gather information, and it's going to be a drag for you all because you're going to have to listen to this agenda item every month until we actually do this, because I'm obligated to share with you. And if I don't do it on the agenda, then I forget. Like last month, I forgot that in February 2020 we talked about some policies, and then I came to February 2021 and I was like, oh my God, I didn't even realize, I've totally forgot to circle back to the committee, because apparently nothing happened in 2020 except for COVID. So I forgot.
Yeah.
It's
so,
just, yeah.
So Cheryl, I know that you're gathering all this information. And I'm also thinking, Louise, Sandy was on the committee with you too, right?
I have all the information. There's so many people that were on the committees. If you know people who are on the committees and you want to like reach out to them and have them reach back to me, you're welcome to do that. That would be amazing.
Okay. That's good. Okay. The other thing I was going to say, Heather, do you want to go ahead?
No, you go first.
Okay. The other thing I was going to say is when we've gathered information and this is sort of my wheelhouse, pulling out information and making sure that media love it. I can pitch the story to Janice Ramsey and see if she can do an article.
I have to say no, because we have a communications staff who do all of our media and all that kind of stuff. So even though I love that idea, what we would have to do first is involve our communication staff and then get that permission for you to pitch it to whomever. But we are internally connected to a number of media, but we have policies and procedures that we have to follow related to that. So don't get me in trouble.
No, okay, that's good.
Thank you.
I'm just, as you're talking about all these stories and everything, and as we're thinking about like COVID and all of the restrictions and how do we celebrate all of this, I'm wondering whether this might make for a good historical plaque somewhere. Maybe. Or like one of these wonderful ones that we have also all over Barrie, but like, even though it's modern, even though it's only in the last 20 years, like, do you know the history of accessibility in Ontario? Or do you know the history of accessibility in Barrie? You know, just the fact that curb cuts didn't exist
absolutely
20 years ago. And like, what are some of the things that we've done over the last 20 years to highlight that, maybe even obviously in an accessible way at City Hall?
Maybe. I think we could do tons of things. I love what you're thinking. Like just one, I'm just going to share one more did you know, because there's a million did you knows that I could share with you from even the 10 years that I've been involved, but from before my time. Louise would remember this, but before my time. So there's two gentlemen, Bob Kerr and Bob Peebles, who helped create the Bax bus. So before, like, specialized transit. So the city of Barrie didn't actually, as a city, as a municipality, we didn't run Bax. It was outside of the municipality. And it was because two individuals lived in our community, one of them being Bob Kerr, who he used to have to like get people to stick him in the back of their pickup trucks with like sandbags around his chair so that he could get places, because we didn't have accessible taxis, obviously, or vans, and we didn't have specialized transit, and he couldn't get on the buses. So like all sorts of strange things like he would put up with to get just, like to the curling rink or wherever he wanted to go. And so he and his very good friend Bob Peebles were the ones that helped create that, and they were both members of the Accessibility Advisory Committee. So yeah, like it's pretty neat. And you're right, Heather, like we need to share it.
Yeah.
So what I'm going to do is
the idea of disability history in general is just so unknown. And I think that there would be so much value to our community if we could, like, I know last year we didn't even touch some of our money. If we could use some of that this year for National Accessibility Week, even if it's not ready to go that week, but if we could do that as our contribution this year as a historical notation, I just think that would be fantastic.
That's great. So that's it.
Sorry,
that's
Louise would like to. Louise would like to speak.
Yeah, Louise, totally. But just before you speak, because you're on mute, Louise. Sorry, you're still on mute.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, one person who can do the before and after too is Kathy Caldwell. In terms of cut what do you call somebody cuts, but and she was very involved with she probably was one of the first users that's around of the back system.
Yeah, I'm Kathy and I have spoken many times. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. No. Yeah. So I'm going to be reaching out to as many people as possible, but if you have contacts, send them my way. Absolutely. That's awesome. Okay. So Catherine, this is all I had to say. So this is what's happening.
Okay. I have a couple of things. I would just have, my head is kind of spinning with ideas, but do we know, I know it sounds really weird, but do we know which, where the first curb cut was done?
Well, so we did have curb cuts in Barrie, like 20 years ago. They just weren't like everywhere. Okay. So I just want to clarify, like, it's not like, but there was a time probably earlier than that, like, like the 90s and the 80s where there weren't any so what I can do is I can go back into our engineering history and discover, I can find that out. We will have had one by 2001, but they just weren't as commonplace. And as you guys know from being on this committee, we don't just tear up concrete just because concrete's expensive. So when you're laying a sidewalk, so if they laid a sidewalk in 1974, unless it really needed to be replaced, it might be in good working order by 1990, and in which case it likely would not have had a curb depression. So see what I'm saying? So depending on when concrete was poured, that's something that we would be faced with.
Okay. My final idea that I'll share right now is I almost see it like there's so many neat things that happened and continue to happen, but so many events and items. It would be really neat to have that sort of historical timeline that goes along, and then you have your little, this happened then, and in 1992 this happened, and just to show how the transition has worked towards gradually.
I like that idea. That's a great idea. I do.
It would just be really neat. It's very visual too, but it has a lot of information on it, and it's shareable.
Yeah, absolutely. And just remember, just because it's visual to you doesn't mean that it's gonna mean anything to somebody else. So if we create it visually, we have to also create an alternative that's accessible to individuals who aren't taking in that information in the same way that you are.
Yeah,
but it's not impossible. We do it all the time. So it's that's all good. So that's it. So that's just I'm just hacking away at it. But you know what I'll do is every month I'm just going to stick this on the agenda. So sometimes I'm going to have a lot to share if you're interested, and sometimes it's just going to be, hey, I'm continuing to work on this. I don't want to take your time unless I need to, but I am really wanting to make sure that you're in the loop on this. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, great. And then
sorry.
Oh, sorry. And then you guys always have the opportunity to email me. So if you guys have ideas about this project, email me. Absolutely. Heather, email me about Moby Mats. We'll talk. Yeah.
Cheryl, if there's something that you'd like to, Cheryl's top 3 fascinating findings, if you want to bring them to the meetings, it'd be kind of fun to keep us learning about the history of the committee and of the work that's done in Barrie. I think that would be kind of cool. I don't know what everybody else thinks.
Mhm.
Doesn't need to be long, like maybe 5 minutes.
Cool.
Mhm.
Awesome. Okay, we're done.
Keep us learning.
Okay.
Okay, anything else we need to bring up? We don't have any reports or anything like that, so I guess we'll just adjourn the meeting.
Yes, go
And-
enjoy some sunshine if you can.
Yes, and thank you for joining us the first time, Marie. Welcome.
Yes.
And everybody get out and enjoy a few minutes of this wonderful weather. Thank you, Robert.
Okay.
Thanks,
Thank
Councillor
you.
Thompson.
Bye. Bye, everybody.
Bye,
Bye.
guys. It was
Bye,
lovely to meet
everybody.
all of you.
Thanks. Take care.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
There we go.
That's my dogs. Yeah, Marie, Tammy will make sure that you have my email so you can email me as well.
Okay,
Yeah, anytime.
perfect.